The life cycle of every technical standard that goes through a work group includes both a drafting phase, an internal review phase, and then a public review phase. And of course, this public review phase is critical for ensuring openness of the process, transparency of what's in development, and an opportunity for input for people who, for one reason or another, may not be able to join and actively participate in the drafting phase. So an individual standard may actually go to public review more than once. It depends on how much input comes out of the public review and how substantially that causes the draft standard to change. So, we consider it a really important phase because it's a chance for anybody out there who may be concerned to check that it addresses their requirements, to check that it's technically accurate, and to offer whatever input they might want. Public review can have a substantial impact on the final form of a standard. It's probably important to consider what the working group of a standard actually looks like. It usually consists of a very small number of people involved in the drafting, as well as some additional people involved in internal review. And a lot of that internal review is just to ensure that we catch mistakes and things like that before they get out to the public. So the form of the document that enters into public review has already been sort of substantially quality checked. But public review naturally exposes a draft to a much wider range of viewpoints, and we've seen in the past in standards that have gone through this phase that some of the impact actually results in significant changes to the documents. So I wouldn't say that it's exactly the same as being involved in the work group itself as an internal reviewer or a drafter, but because you see a different form of the document and you see it at a different stage in its life cycle, but it's certainly taken just as seriously as any feedback that's received internally from the work group. So I suppose there's a different character and flavour to what goes on during the public review phase and the working group phase. Of course, during the public review, there's an opportunity to have feedback and impact on what the final form of the document is going to look like. But you are kind of starting from there's a starting point because a draft of that document is put out by the authorship team and the internal review team. But before we get to that stage, of course, the working group starts with a problem statement and essentially a blank canvas. Some working groups start with a proposed solution, but that's not mandated by the TSC process. So, of course, if you're involved earlier in the life cycle of the document, then you have a different degree of influence, I suppose, over shaping that document. When it comes out of the internal work group and goes into public review, it's already sort of substantially formed. So, you could potentially propose a complete rewrite of the document as part of public review, but we haven't seen anybody do that. What's more likely is that you would tweak around the edges or suggest that, it doesn't address this problem. Can we add something to the standard to do that? So both roles offer influence over what the final document looks like, but in different ways. So it's up to, I guess, individual participants how important a standard is to them, and how much they want to be involved in the shaping of the original form, as to whether they feel it's necessary to join the working group itself or just be a party to the public review. It actually did have a fairly substantial impact. There are two data formats that are addressed in the Merkle Proof standard. One is a binary data format, and one is a more human-readable JSON data format. And we originally had the two somewhat matching each other in style and structure. And during internal review, we received sort of a balanced weight of opinions that that the JSON should be more traditional JSON. And there were sort of an equal number of people arguing on the other side that keeping consistency between the two was just as important. So that question kind of got left up in the air, and in fact it was during the public review phase that the balance of opinion tipped, and that resulted in a kind of substantial rewrite of the JSON format. And it gave us the confidence that that reworked version was acceptable to a much larger portion of the potential end users of that standard. So the impact was significant. Well, every standard that goes through the TSC, of course, will, and there are a few in different stages of their life cycle. There's the envelope specification, which is in public review at the time when I'm recording this. And that is a specification that addresses standardized ways of embedding data into transactions. There's also the Paymail working group, which is probably going to enter review, public review in the near future, and a couple of new working groups that are still in submission phase that address SPB envelopes, which is different to the other envelope that I mentioned, but it's an extension of the Merkle Proof standard. Allows users to exchange SPB proofs along with transactions and other data that's needed for verification. So I would expect that quite a lot more will come on board. For an idea of what is likely, take a look at the TSC roadmap. That may not necessarily be exhaustive, other things might arise, but gives an indication of what the industry has raised as important to address. So anybody can participate in a public review, but of course the first step is knowing that it's happening. In order to do that, I would suggest go to the TSC website, tsc.bitcoinassociation.net, and register. If you sign up for the TSC newsletter, there's no promotional or marketing material there. It's the channel that we use to notify people that work groups have been formed or that they've entered various stages of their life cycle, which of course includes public review. So if you want to make sure you're on top of what's going through the TSC, that's the best channel to use.